This is Green Lantern's Corps, issue 2 of the Convergences miniseries. I reviewed part 1 a couple of months back, and then I gave that issue away to someone. And then I bought both issues. When I did issue 1, people wanted to see more, and that is why I got it again. And this time got issue 2, which I didn't have. It is a good miniseries, especially if you are familiar with the comics that this is paying tribute to. And even if you're not, I think it might appeal to modern Green Lanterns fans too. These are still the characters that you should recognise, and you get a decent arc here with them doing stuff. There are 3 main Green Lanternses in here. Jordan Albert, pictured here, and another is Alvin Stewart, pictured a few times here. And they have gone off to fight this alien monster. I did mention in the last issue that the placement or the continuity in this isn't pristine. One thing we have here is Alvin Stewart is shown wearing a mask. And him not wearing a mask was a big deal. Him ditching the mask and exposing his identity. It was a big character piece for him. It was one of the things that set him apart from Jordan Albert. And that issue 188, it came a year before Gary Gardner got out of his coma and became a Green Lanterns. Gary is the lead character here, the third of the Green Lanternses, and this is his story. I think it blends the 2 distinct versions of Gary Gardner, the Silver Age, Bronze Age version, with the more familiar rude boy revamp that emerged when he came out of his coma. I think it blends those 2 characterizations quite well. I do think this is a great story if you are a fan of Gary Gardner or his character. What has happened is that bastard Jordan Albert, he confiscated Gary Gardner's Green Lanterns ring. But Gary Gardner won't sit this out. He still wants to be a hero, even without his powers. The Convergence's plot was that different pockets of reality, different cities from different time periods, they were put in domes by a bad guy, and then they were forced to fight each other. With all the cities being from scattered timelines and realities, it meant you could have something like this. What we are seeing here is 80s Green Lanterns, Steve Engeltine era Green Lanterns. I am showing this cover here even though I could only find a low-res image of it, because it is directly referenced on a page later in this issue. I like that Convergences allowed them to do a mini-series without having to pay any heed to the more recent reworkings of Green Lanterns' mythology and history. This plays it exactly how it was before 2004. There's no pink lanterns or black lanterns. It is still a world of wonder without limit. I did decide to try and do this video without complaining about you know who, and how I cannot enjoy Green Lantern's comics anymore because of him. We get some insight into Gary Gardner through his nightmares, and thank God they are not laden with symbolism. They are blunt and don't use metaphor. He is dreaming about the torture he suffered at the hands of bad guys. The abuse which left him brain dead and in a coma. Here is Mr. Sinister torturing him. As I said in part 1, Gary Gardner's brain damage was never handled that well. But this miniseries tries to explain away some of the irksome bothers, like his drastic shift in personality, him becoming a very right-wing arsehole, apparently through brain damage. The Gary Gardner we see in this series is halfway between those versions, and this is showing him as suffering post-traumatic stress disorder, and rightfully resenting Jordan Albert for putting him in a position to experience that torture. And also just resenting Jordan Albert for his overall shitty nature. When Gary Gardner was in a coma, Jordan Albert stole his fiancée. Gary Gardner meets some characters I do not know. Some guy calling himself Hercules, but he doesn't have a beard, so I do not believe him. And a woman called Jennifer Monroe. It's nice to see Captain America's sidekick, No Man's long-lost sister, show up in a DC series. Were I a betting man, I would put money on the likelihood of these characters coming from an issue of First Issue Special. Surely. First Issue Special was where all the lame DC characters first appeared. The cover of this shows Gary Gardner arm wrestling fake Hercules. And it's not just a dopey, silly joke they put on the cover. They do arm wrestle in the issue. Gary Gardner is competing for the armour that fake Hercules is wearing. And he sort of cheats to win. And now Gary Gardner, without his Green Lantern's ring, he is ready to get himself involved in all the battles going on between his city and another of the cities. He saves the two other Green Lanterns who were knocked out. And then we have this ridiculous multi-page advertisement for some bullshit. Before we get to a nice bit between the three, where they talk about how Gary is a worthy hero, and that he didn't have to save them, but he did. And so, now that he has proved himself, he gets to have his ring back. The three Green Lanterns of Earth, they are ready to go and kick some bad guy monster butt. And it is very niche. But I like when we get to see Gary Gardner in his first / the original Green Lantern's outfit. Like this, before the bowl cut and before the dual station redesign. There's nothing wrong with that redesign. It is the costume that we are all familiar with. But I get some excitement from seeing Gary Gardner with this look. When he is like this, it, for me, reflects the tragedy of the character more than the abrasive buffoonery of what he become. I pointed out in the first video, originally, Gary Gardner, he wasn't this big jackass. He wasn't a moron. He was a very generic, bland, perfect hero. This is a guy, pun intended, who would have been a great hero and a great Green Lanterns if only he had been closer to the crash site than Jordan Albert was. Instead, Gary Gardner was passed over and then only suffered when he finally got to play out his intended fate. I think that would actually be my favourite element of his character. That he missed out on greatness. That he was overlooked and he missed out on his destiny. That without Jordan Albert, Gary Gardner would have been the main Green Lanterns and could have been even better than Jordan Albert. Gary Gardner was, for all intents and purposes, better than Jordan Albert. He was a teacher at a special needs school, for fuck's sake. He was created originally as this perfect person to miss out on becoming the perfect hero. When you look at how many alternative reality stories we have had spinning out of Superman or Batman's origins, it is a missed opportunity that we have never had one doing the obvious question of what if Gary Gardner became Green Lanterns instead of Jordan Albert? Yeah, his first appearance was basically that. But we didn't get to see a real in-depth look at how things would be different. I don't think that a teacher at a special needs school would ever go insane and murder all the other Green Lanternses. Even if... You know what? When Bicycle Superman and Mongoloid destroyed Green Lantern's city, that special needs school would have been included. They genocided the entire city. Of course the special needs school and all the special needs children inside it perished horrible, painful deaths. Even darling little Enoch. So this is when we get to see Gary Gardner save the day and prove Jordan Albert wrong. And for one fleeting moment in Convergences, Gary Gardner gets to be the Green Lanterns that he could have been. He defeats the monster all by himself. And then right at the end, he also punches Jordan Albert in the face. And that bit is good. There was a tiny moment where I was feeling lulled by this. The stuff with fake Hercules. I was feeling this is actually quite average. But it turned it around and delivered a good second half. It is only 2 issues. All these Convergences spin-offs were 2 issues. And I recommend any that catch your eye. I have read them all. And there is some dreck in there. But some of them are brilliant. And others are pleasing. I think when it comes to outright bad ones, there was maybe 3 or 4 that were dreadful. And the rest were passable or better. This one is a good one, I reckon. I want to see this creative team do a 3rd story together. on another totally random thing like Death Clock or Teen Titans versus Bugs Bunny, I'll give this one a 7 thumbs up.